There's a reason we call it a salary. It isn't a coincidence, and it isn't just a figure of speech. It's a direct inheritance from ancient Rome. In this soldier's palm rests something that, at the time, was worth more than the coin jingling in his pocket back at camp. Salt functioned as a form of currency in the Roman world, carefully rationed, tightly guarded, and distributed to soldiers as part of their compensation. This practice was so deeply woven into military life that the Latin word for it, salarium, became the literal root of the word we use today. This wasn't a symbolic gesture or a ceremonial tradition. It was a practical necessity that kept the largest army in the ancient world functioning. Salt preserved meat. It preserved fish. A world without refrigeration, it meant the difference between food that lasted and food that rotted. An army marching for months needed rations that wouldn't spoil, and that meant salt had to travel with every legion every single time. Withhold the salt, and you didn't just anger your soldiers, you crippled an empire's ability to project power across an entire continent. Rome's dependence on salt was so absolute that it physically reshaped the map, carving permanent infrastructure into the Italian countryside itself. The Via Salaria, literally the Salt Road, stretched for over 200 miles, connecting the coast to the beating heart of the empire. It ran from the salt flats near the mouth of the Tiber River, all the way inland to the city of Rome itself. Ox carts loaded with heavy white blocks moved along this route constantly, day and night, rain or shine, never truly stopping. This was a slow-motion supply chain, one that quietly kept the empire fed, paid, and militarily functional for centuries.
Fine, pure salt from the pans of Ostia.
It was weighed on bronze scales with the same careful precision as gold or silver, merchants haggling fiercely over every single gram. A single satchel could be traded for a full day's labor. In Rome, salt wasn't just useful, it was wealth you could hold. As centuries passed and empires rose and fell, the hunger for salt never faded. It simply moved underground, deeper into the earth. Across medieval Europe, miners began digging far beneath the surface, chasing veins of white mineral hidden inside solid rock. Some of these operations carved out entire caverns from solid salt deposits, cathedral-sized chambers lit only by flickering torchlight. These mines were worked for generations.
Keep striking that lower seam! This salt is hard as stone.
Every strike of the pickaxe against stone was worth something real. Wages, food, survival for the families waiting above ground. Entire towns grew wealthy from what lay beneath them, while others fell into ruin when their veins finally ran dry. Above ground, cities built entire empires on the salt trade, none more successfully than the merchant republic of Venice. Venice turned salt into the very foundation of its wealth, a maritime power built on barrels instead of soldiers. Merchant ships arrived daily at its canals, loaded with cargo bound for markets scattered across the entire Mediterranean coastline. Watchtowers stood guard over every shipment, protecting cargo that, pound for pound, was worth more than most people could imagine. Because salt was worth fighting over, it was also worth defending. And defense in the medieval world meant stone walls and iron gates. Castles across Europe built fortified storerooms specifically designed to guard it, protected by thick doors and armed watchmen day and night. Inside, inventories were counted block by block, meticulously recorded, as if every single piece were a bar of precious treasure. In many very real ways, it was exactly that, a currency of survival that could be traded, hoarded, or stolen. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away, in the vast salt flats of West Africa, an entirely different method of extraction was unfolding. Here, there were no underground tunnels, just endless, cracked earth stretching to the horizon under a punishing desert sun. Workers pried heavy slabs of salt loose from the sun-baked ground, using nothing but long wooden tools and raw determination. They labored under brutal, unforgiving heat to harvest a resource that would soon begin an extraordinary journey across the desert. It moved by camel caravan, trading hands again and again, its value climbing with every single mile until it rivaled gold. Salt didn't only move over land, it crossed entire oceans, packed tightly alongside barrels of salted fish bound for distant ports. This preservation method allowed ships to carry food that could survive months at sea without spoiling in the salty, humid air. Storms threatened nearly every voyage, waves crashing violently over decks loaded with cargo that entire crews depended on for survival. The cargo simply had to make it home, because without it, sailors faced starvation long before they ever reached land again. By the 1700s, in France, salt had taken on a far darker identity than anywhere else in Europe. The French crown imposed the gabelle, a mandatory salt tax so despised it would eventually help topple a monarchy. Some villagers were forced to pay far more than they could realistically afford, simply to season the food on their own tables. Tax collectors set up tables directly in village squares, weighing out salt and recording every single payment in official ledgers. Quietly, in household after household, resentment built against a crown that taxed even the most basic essentials of daily survive. That resentment didn't stay quiet forever. Eventually, it found its way out into the streets, and there was no putting it back. It spread through the streets of Paris like wildfire, carried by torchlight, whispered anger, and rapidly growing crowds of ordinary citizens. What began as frustration over a tax on something as basic and necessary as food became something far larger and more dangerous. It became one of many sparks that, together, helped ignite the French Revolution and permanently reshape the course of European history. Fists rose into the night air. Makeshift banners were carried through darkened streets by people who had finally run out of patience. A monarchy that had taxed even the essentials of survival now found itself facing a population that had reached its absolute limit. The gabelle wasn't the only cause of the revolution, but it became a powerful symbol of everything the people were fighting against. By morning, the political landscape of France, and eventually all of Europe, had begun to shift in ways nobody could reverse. A century and a half later, on the completely other side of the world, history found a way to repeat a familiar shape. Under British colonial rule, India's entire salt production was tightly controlled by a foreign government thousands of miles away. It was made illegal for ordinary citizens to produce their own salt, even along coastlines where it occurred naturally in abundance. This forced millions of people to buy salt at inflated prices from the very same empire that governed their daily lives. In 1930, one man decided that this particular injustice was worth defying, no matter the personal cost involved. Mahatma Gandhi, joined by thousands of followers, set out on foot, walking steadily toward the distant coastline ahead of them. It was a march of 240 miles, one that would become among history's most iconic acts of nonviolent resistance. When he finally reached the shoreline after weeks of walking, he broke British law in the simplest way imaginable. He bent down and picked up a single handful of salt from the wet sand, a small, quiet, unforgettable act of defiance. Today, most of us toss salt over our shoulder for luck, barely thinking twice about the substance sitting quietly in our kitchen. But for nearly all of human history, this small white crystal was worth killing for, worth taxing, worth marching 240 miles to reclaim. Funded armies, it sparked a revolution and helped end an empire, all from air.